Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I look forward to unveiling my budget today. But first, I want to say something very important. Yesterday was a sad, tragic day for America. Our U.S. Capitol was under siege. Our very democracy was under siege. Law enforcement officers and the brave men and women of the Capitol Police were under siege. Lawmakers, staff, and members of the press were under siege. Until recently, I served the people of Montana there and spoke on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives that violent mob sought to seize. It was jarring to see. When I was inaugurated on Monday, I asked you to join me in praying for our state and our country. We need it now more than ever. I know our best days are ahead of us, and even if we are in the midst of some real challenges today. Thank you again for joining us today. I'm proud to unveil my budget. I first want to thank Kurt Almy, the budget director. It's no secret that Kurt is very smart and very sharp, and he's a dedicated public servant. Kurt and his talented team, many of whom are in the back of the room here today, worked many long hours over the last few weeks in a very short period of time to put this budget together that works for Montana. There are many folks to recognize, but if I did that, we wouldn't have any time for questions today. So I want to say a special thank you to Ryan Evans and Amy Sassano for their leadership of the budget staff and the hard work. We have a tremendous product here to share with the people. And we wouldn't be here today without all of your contributions. And just to everybody in the Office of Budget and Program Planning, thank you for your hard work. And thank you, Kurt, as well. Well, today I'm proud to announce that this budget is the roadmap for Montana's comeback. I promised we would provide tax relief to hardworking Montanans and get Montana open for business. This budget does that. It provides about $50 million in broad-based and targeted tax reductions. Because we have the second highest individual income tax rate in the Rocky Mountain West, too many businesses choose to take their operations and the associated jobs to Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. With our budget, Montanans will keep more of what they earn. Cutting the income tax rate to 6.75%, more than half of Montana taxpayers will see income tax cuts of almost $30 million per year. This is just a first step. As we find greater efficiencies in government and our economy continues to grow, we will continue to cut taxes and make Montana more competitive with our neighbors. Our goal is to continue reducing tax rates over time in incremental steps. We go beyond rate cuts to help our small businesses thrive, though. Small business owners tell me that navigating our business equipment tax compliance is a burdensome task. Our budget provides needed relief by exempting business equipment of up to $200,000 through the Big Jobs Act, or Business Investment Growth Jobs Act. 4,000 Montana small business owners will no longer have to value their equipment or file and pay this tax. Our budget establishes the entrepreneur magnet, providing incentives for businesses to come to Montana and bring their high-paying jobs with them. This will give us a new tool for Montanans to come back home. For all Montanans and job creators out there, Montana is open for business. Every 2 years, like clockwork, reappraisals drive up Montana's property tax bills. Our budget provides an additional $3 million per year to help lower-income Montanans, including seniors and disabled vets, who shouldn't have to choose between putting food on the table or paying their prescription drug costs and paying their skyrocketing property taxes. I asked the legislator to put a bill on my desk to accomplish this. I promised we would improve educational opportunities by addressing starting teacher pay and investing in trades education. This budget does. Montana has the worst starting teacher pay in the entire country today. It makes it harder to recruit starting teachers. These low salaries cause our Montana teachers to leave Montana. I want them to be able to stay and educate our kids. We must do better, and under our budget, we do. Our budget provides $2.5 million in incentives for local school boards to improve pay for starting teachers through the TEACH Act, or the Tomorrow's Educators Are Coming Home Act. We know that a four-year college degree isn't the right path for everyone. We also hear from small business owners from around the state that they can't find enough skilled workers. This budget helps bridge that skills gap by boosting trades education. In fact, our budget invests $1 million per year in trades education and training by providing businesses a credit for employee education and training through Montana Trades Education Credit. This will help create better opportunities for Montanans throughout the state. I promised we would combat the drug epidemic through prevention, treatment, and recovery programs. This budget does. This is one of the things I am most proud of in this budget. Few Montanans have been left untouched by the epidemic of addiction and drug use. The crisis is ripping apart our families and our communities. Our budget commits an additional $23.5 million in state and federal dollars per year to community substance prevention and treatment programs. Our budget devotes marijuana tax revenue and part of the tobacco tax settlement in the Heart Fund, or the Healing and Ending Addiction Through Recovery and Treatment Fund. The Heart Fund will help fill the gaps in our current system, and when leveraged with federal Medicaid funds, will fund a full continuum of substance abuse prevention and treatment programs in the communities across the state. Our budget also provides state funding to continue 5 drug courts. To combat increasing violent crime, particularly crime associated with meth, we're adding 14 new parole and probation officers in our communities to help provide more supervision and reentry services to reduce recidivism. We're also providing more substance abuse and mental health treatment in our corrections facilities. And to ensure the course of justice is swift, my budget provides for a new district court judge in both Gallatin and Flathead counties. Finally, I promised we would hold the line on new spending. This budget does. After a decade of out-of-control spending increases, this budget brings fiscal responsibility back to state government while providing essential services. Even with statutory required increased spending and investments in combating the drug epidemic, increasing starting teacher pay, and expanding trades education, total general fund increase less than 1% per year. This roadmap to the Montana comeback will help unlock our state's full potential. Now I want Kurt to come and provide some remarks as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Gianforte. He's right. The hours have been long, but with this budget we'll accomplish lower taxes, more jobs, greater competitiveness. It's been worth it. I want to thank you for your leadership on this, Governor Gianforte, and to all the budget staff in the back of the room for all of your hard work. With the Montana Comeback Plan, the governor laid out a clear course of action to help Montana realize its full potential. This budget really is the roadmap to a Montana comeback, delivering on the governor's priorities to create jobs, increase starting teacher pay, invest in trades education, and confront the drug epidemic by filling out our continuum of care for substance abuse prevention and treatment. It decreases general fund spending by $100 million over the biennium compared to the previous administration's proposed budget of a few weeks ago. Overall spending is flat, and general fund spending, including mandatory expenditures, increases by less than 1% per year, well below inflation. This budget doesn't dip into our budget stabilization fund. In fact, it eliminates the $25 million transfer from the budget stabilization fund that the previous administration had proposed. And finally, this budget leaves us with a strong ending fund balance, $50 million greater than that of our previous administration's budget. And our ending fund balance and reserves will total more than $450 million. Governor Gianforte's budget is responsible, puts taxpayers first, and keeps the promises of the Montana Comeback Plan. It really is the road to Montana Comeback. We want to invite you all to come back at 3 o'clock today. We'll have a further briefing with me and budget staff where we can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, Governor Gianforte, and I'll turn it back to you.
So we're happy to take some questions now, and as Director Almy mentioned, at 3 o'clock we'll have an additional session where we can dive under the covers and answer detailed questions. So who would like to start? Yes?
Will there be any tax relief for the middle class?
Yes, so very good question. The tax relief that is in this comeback plan budget is very broad-based. Over half of Montanans will see decreases in taxes with this plan.
Governor Zach Kaplan, Montana right now. I wanted to touch back on your opening comments for just a moment. You know, it was not too long ago that you were sitting in the House of Representatives yourself. I'm wondering on a personal level, what was going through your mind as you're watching the news coverage yesterday, just on a personal level, having been there, you know, just a couple of weeks ago?
Well, I think we were all shocked. I mean, we all watched it, and I saw very familiar sights as the Capitol was stormed. Violence has no place in our civil society. I was texting with former colleagues in the House. Some of them were on the floor at the time, and it was jarring. I was thankful that Congress reconvened in the early hours of today and ratified the election, and it's time to move on.
And just to follow up on that, there were obviously protests that were peaceful here today, or yesterday rather, at the state capitol here in Helena. Do you feel safe in the state capitol, even with protests going on like they are?
I do, and I think the country could take a page out of Montana's book. Our First Amendment is dear to us, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of association, but it needs to be peaceful. And we demonstrated that here yesterday on the state capitol, and I wish they had followed our model back in Washington. Next. Do you have one online?
Hi, Governor Gianforte. This is Maritza Giorgio from NBC Montana. I'm wondering if you can explain two things. One, where are those $100 million in cuts? And also if you can explain the incentives to raise teacher pay.
Good. So really the vast majority of the savings are related to decreasing increases that were proposed by the prior administration, almost without exception. So we've done exactly what we promised in the comeback plan. We've held the line on new spending. That's where the funds come from to provide tax relief and invest in trades and attack the drug epidemic. Please repeat the second question you had.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could explain the incentives to raise teacher pay a little bit more.
Sure. So we need to respect that teacher pay is set by local school boards, and we did not want to violate that local control principle. So the way we have some proposed legislation, we're working with the legislative leadership on this, that would provide incentives to local school board to raise starting teacher pay. They will have to come up with some of the money. The state will provide some of the money. Hopefully the net result is we have increased starting teacher pay. Next here, yeah.
Switch back to yesterday's events. You haven't, or you have denounced the invasion that took place at the U.S. Capitol yesterday. Do you believe that Donald Trump incited that invasion, and do you denounce Donald Trump?
So the crimes occurred in the Capitol. And as I said, civil violence is completely inappropriate. I was pleased that the president said, go home. There probably could have been a stronger statement made there. I'm glad it's over, and I look forward to a peaceful transfer of power on the 20th this month.
Thank you.
Yes.
Governor, so you said repeatedly that state spending was out of control or grew out of control under the prior administration. Could you talk a bit specifically about which portions of the budget you have in mind there and provide some specific numbers that underscore like that description of things?
Okay. I'm going to let Director Almy address that if you could. Did you hear the?
I did,
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and we'll be going into detail at that, on that issue at 3 o'clock. But as the governor said, areas that we've focused on in this budget as we've tried to hold the line on spending is reductions in increases in spending in certain areas. We'll talk about that again more at 3 o'clock. We've looked at correcting some over-contributions into health insurance plans and pension plans, and then also there's been a reduction in coal tax funds, I think that we're all aware of since January of last year when Coal Strip 1 and 2 closed and the resulting impact on the Rosebud mine. And so there are, of course, impacts in our ability to spend coal tax revenues that are no longer there. But we'll go into more detail on that at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I think we'll take a question online.
Hi, Governor. This is Chad Sokol at the Daily Interlake.
Hi, Chad.
I'm curious. I've been looking at this. I've been looking at the liability shield bill that came out yesterday, and it says specifically that folks would not face civil penalties for if they're in compliance with federal or state ordinances, regulations, laws. And so I'm curious, is it your understanding that this would preclude cities or counties from taking action to enforce their own local COVID restrictions?
Yeah, the purpose, the legislation I've asked for, and I have not reviewed the specific text that you're talking about. We're going to work with the legislative leadership to get something we're comfortable with. The goal is that small businesses, houses of worship, nonprofits, and schools should have protection if they'd followed some common sense and clear guidelines that we will be publishing. We're cleaning up some of the guidelines that have been published related to the steps that small businesses and others need to take. We'll have that to you within the next couple of days. So there'll be very clear rules of the road, safe harbor, if you will, that if you follow those, you're going to be immune from lawsuits related to COVID, and that's the goal. Yes, Holly.
I'm wondering, so in this flyer here, it talks about changes to individual income tax rate with business equipment tax, some other things you'd like to change. In terms of the revenue estimate, what do these changes do? The legislature has one that they're moving forward with. The previous administration had theirs. Where is your administration with the revenue estimate compared to what those previous ones were given some of these changes?
Yeah, we've been working. I'm going to let Director Almy address that question.
The revenue estimate that we're working from hasn't changed, but the specific tax proposals obviously will impact revenue going forward. And when we talk at 3 o'clock and when you see the balance sheet that we publish here shortly, you'll see the breakout for each of these items and what the fiscal impact will be for each year of the biennium.
And then within your proposal, is there a place for the anticipated revenue from the cannabis legalization? Is that spent within this administration's budget?
It is, and I'll let the governor, or do you want me to address that?
Sure.
Okay. Again, and as the governor has mentioned, with...
I can take it.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so we plan to recognize the voters' wishes in implementing the I-190. I believe that our Constitution reserves appropriation of funds to the state legislature. What we are requesting in this budget is that revenues from the legalization of marijuana be prioritized for two things. One is addiction recovery, and secondly, economic development. So that is different than what was in the initiative, but that right is reserved to the legislature. We're asking them to prioritize those two things with any funds that are raised from the legalization of marijuana. We'll take one online.
Hi, Governor. Keith Schubert here from the Daily Montanan. I'm just wondering what types of agencies will the $23.5 million for substance abuse go to, and does your budget include any COVID-19 specific funding for things like vaccination infrastructure or your expanded vaccination plan?
Yeah, Director Almy has really taken the lead on this. I'd love to have you address that.
Thank you. On the first question related to the $23.5 million, those are dollars that will be going through Department of Health and Human Services, and they'll be leveraged against Medicaid. And the $23.5 million is the net result of both the state and federal components that we'll be able to use for drug prevention and treatment under the governor's plan. Regarding the COVID funds, that component does not use any COVID funds. The COVID funds that were appropriated by Congress most recently are much more narrowly tailored than the CARES Act funds. We're still awaiting guidance from Washington to have a better understanding of what the parameters are of each of those buckets of funds, if you will. But at this point, we're not anticipating using CARES Act, or excuse me, new coronavirus funds as any part of that $23.5 million.
Question in the room? Yeah.
Governor Jonathan Imberi, Montana Television Network. I just wanted to follow up a little bit more about COVID-19. Is there any indication in the budget of how much state money might be directed toward COVID response, and if so, any specifics of where that might go?
Yeah, so that's really this most recent bill that passed Congress. That money will be used directly for COVID. Again, as Director Almy mentioned, we're still waiting for some guidelines out of Washington. But again, there's much narrower guidelines associated with that, which gives us less degrees of flexibility. That is not included in the budget we're proposing today.
So there's not any state funding, general funding, or anything like that for the year?
Can you address that?
At this point, there is not. At this point, we still are waiting to see if there's going to be any gaps in the funding that's provided by the latest federal bill, so we're doing that analysis now. We hope that there's going to be sufficient federal funding to meet all of our ongoing COVID-related needs.
Thank you.
Can we take another question online?
Hi, Governor. This is Catherine with KHN. My question actually circles back to COVID vaccine rollout here. When it comes to phase 1B, which includes a large group of people, I'm wondering what guidelines or steps you're offering to avoid kind of a first come, first served scenario.
Yeah, so we did change policy this week, prioritizing the most vulnerable in our communities. And Catherine, you're right, we're limited on supply of vaccine, although we're getting weekly deliveries. And this vaccine is really makes the light at the end of the tunnel much brighter for us. 1A, we're going to first in line our frontline healthcare workers, people in nursing homes and long-term care facilities. Under our new guidance, we're prioritizing the most vulnerable. And I think we can all agree that we need to get to the vaccine to the people that are in danger of death from COVID. The definition we're using is 70 years of age or older, or with one of a very specific list of underlying healthcare conditions. In some communities across the state, we have already moved into the 1B category. So if you are elderly or have an underlying healthcare condition, you should contact your local public health official or local hospital and get an appointment. It is on a first-come, first-served basis, but we're prioritizing the people that are most vulnerable, and that's the way we can minimize deaths and hospitalizations as we move through this crisis together. We'll take a question here. Yeah.
Hi, Governor. I appreciate you holding the 3 p.m. conference. I think I'll hold my budget questions for them or for then. I'd also like to follow up on yesterday's events. There are some people who are calling for the president to be removed from office. I wonder if you think he should be removed from office.
Yeah, so what we saw yesterday was tragic. I clearly have categorically condemned what happened. I was pleased that just at 3:30 this morning, the election results have been ratified. I've said since December that Joe Biden's going to be our next president. That's going to occur on January 20th, and that'll be the next step in this process. I think there'll be a peaceful transfer of power. We'll go online.
Hi, this is Renee Jean with the Sydney Herald.
Hi, Renee.
That press conference this afternoon to go through details, is that also going to be available by telephone? And if not, could I get some color on where the cuts are in this budget to achieve the increases that have been listed today?
Okay. Renee, we will provide remote access at 3 o'clock for anybody who wants to participate that way. And again, the efficiencies that are in this budget to fund tax reductions and our investments in trades and drug courts and fighting addiction come from decreasing, by and large, from decreasing proposed increases. These are not cuts to underlying essential services. Is another one online?
Hi, Governor Gianforte. It's Maritza again. I'm wondering if any of those cuts to increases in spending include to local governments.
No. Director Almy is telling me no. Where there have been adjustments, there have been backfills from the general fund. We're preserving funding for local government. Another one? Yep.
Hi, Governor Keith Schubert, Daily Montanan again. I was just wondering, you mentioned 14 more parole officers. I was wondering if you had a plan as to which counties they would be going to.
Appreciate that question. There is not a specific plan, but the roadmap is laid out, and that's where the supervisees are. I think we're all aware that caseloads for probation and parole officers across the state have gone up significantly since Justice Reinvestment Reform happened in 2017. And we're aware that probation and parole officers, from case study that the Department of Corrections had done, those loads are going up, and they're going up disproportionately. And so in the conversations that the governor and this office has had with the department, that they understand that these new probation and parole officers need to go where the need is. What we have to do is be sure that these individuals who are out in the community are properly supervised. And not only are they supervised, but they're provided proper reentry services so that they get substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, help with jobs, help with housing, so that we can slow down the recidivism rate and the rise in violent crime that we've been seeing in the state.
I want to thank everybody for being here today. We're excited about this comeback plan budget, and we'll see you back at 3 o'clock for more detailed questions. Thank you very much.